Who do you consider to be the very first death metal band? I'm sure many of you out there said Death with their debut album Scream Bloody Gore from 1987. The more metal savvy among you probably mentioned Necrophagia with their debut album Season of the Dead, released a few months earlier, also in 1987. I'm sure even more among you mentioned the subject of today's review. Today we will be taking a look at the band Possessed. Possessed formed in San Francisco in 1983. Their original lead singer, Barry Fisk, committed suicide that very same year. May he rest in peace. He was replaced by vocalist and bassist Jeff Becker. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm not 100% sure that I am. The band recorded their first demo entitled Death Metal in 1984. The term had been around since 1983 when Hellhammer named a fanzine that they ran in Switzerland death metal. The death metal genre was not a thing in 1984, and the band considered themselves to be a thrash metal band. They said that their biggest influences, at least at the time, were Exodus and Venom. After their first demo and before their second demo, the original guitarist, whose name was Brian, was actually fired from the group because his playing was seen to be subpar. He was replaced by Larry Lalonde, who would later become much more well known as one of the members of Primus. Armed with their new guitars, the band would go in to record their second demo. It's simply entitled Demo 1985. Take a guess when that was released. After this demo, the band was signed to Combat Records, a record label from that area of the world who was best known for signing a whole ton of thrash metal and heavy metal bands. Also in 1985, the band would head into the studio and record their very first album. This record is the subject of today's review. Today we will be taking a look at the debut album by Possessed, Seven Churches. Venom released their fourth album in 1985. It also happened to be called Possessed, and it was considered a disappointment by critics and fans alike as a follow-up to their first three, Welcome to Hell, Black Metal, and At War with Satan. Thrash metal had been going very strong for a couple of years at this point, and fans were getting classics like Ride the Lightning by Metallica, War and Pain by Voivod, and the Haunting the Chapel EP by Slayer. Underground heavy metal fans were looking for the next band that would take possession of the title of heaviest band in the world squarely out of the hands of Venom. And that is where Possessed came into play. For many people, Possessed was that band and Seven Churches was that album. My copy is a remastered version pressed on red vinyl. Very cool. The album starts off with a rendition of the theme from The Exorcist. In fact, the very first song on the album is actually called The Exorcist. Immediately after the intro, the opening riff starts up and it lets you know that Possessed is here to kick your ass. About a minute and a half in, you will find one of the most memorable riffs on this entire album. It's awesome. The soloing on this particular song is actually quite good. The vocals are stuck somewhere in between a death metal growl and a thrash metal yell, really. It's kind of like half one, half the other. This song gets even heavier at the end when it kicks into a riff that is backed heavily by a drum beat. It's awesome. The second song is called Pentagram, and it starts off with backwards talking and some kind of demonic voice. This particular track happens to have some of the better drum fills on this entire album. Throughout the album, the drumming tends to be fairly good, so keep an eye out for that. This song also contains some of the better and more complex guitar solos on the album. Although I will say this, the first guitar solo is noticeably better than the second one is. The third track on this album is called Burning in Hell. There's a brief guitar-only intro on this track before it kicks into the main riff of the song. By this point in the album, you've probably pretty much noticed that it has never once slowed down, and this is a theme that will continue throughout the vast majority of this album. It's fast, fast, fast from beginning to end on every single track. The riff that starts at about 1 minute and 43 seconds into this song is another one of the best riffs on the entire album. I love it. It's a shame that this riff is really only used once in this song. Track 4 is called Evil Warriors. It starts off with a good but short guitar solo. Always a good way to start off your song. It kicks into the vocals almost as soon as said guitar solo is over. It has some decent drum fills just before the second solo kicks off. It also has another, although more brief, drum-driven guitar riff that is another one of the heaviest points on the album as a whole. The fifth song on this album, the final track to side 1, is the title track for the album, seven churches. The song's title is a reference to the seven churches of the Roman province of Asia, as mentioned in the book of Revelations in the Bible. This particular track has some very nice double bass work in it. The middle of this song has some of the best solo work on the entire album, with the two guitars dueling each other, going back and forth. It's really awesome. The sixth song on this album is called Satan's Curse. It kicks off side B of the album. The intro to this track features some really awesome drum work on it. The chorus of this track has another one of the absolutely standout riffs on this album. This song marks one of the few tracks on this album that actually happens to have a chorus. That's fairly rare on this particular release. Much like the title track, this song features another very long solo section in it, which I absolutely love. The seventh track on this album is called Holy Hell. The riff beginning at 1 minute and 7 seconds into this song is absolutely badass and is without a doubt the best part of this track. It goes from that riff to a solo section that is significantly shorter than the previous two tracks, and back to that riff until there's about a minute left in this song. It only changes up the riff once again at that final minute, and it gets back to the vocals until it ends. Track 8 on this album is entitled Twisted Minds. It starts with a guitar-only intro before kicking into the main riff of the song. At more than 5 minutes in length, this is the longest song on this album. The drum fills on this particular track are noticeably simpler than they have been at previous points throughout this album. The riff about halfway through this particular track is one of the few times when this album actually slows down a little bit. Towards the end of this song, the drummer puts in some very nice footwork as the guitar squeals over it. The ninth track on this album is called Fallen Angel. It starts off with the ringing of a fairly sizable and deep bell. The guitar kicks in and the music starts to build as the bell backs up the guitar. The ringing of the bell, backed up by the guitar, creates a very cool dichotomy that works extremely well for this album. This actually makes this particular song stand out extremely well on this album. It is awesome. The solos toward the end of the song are also great, especially the second of the two. The final song on this album is called Death Metal. It was also the title track of their very first demo. The intro to this starts off with double bass and some nice drum fills. This is another one of the few songs on this album that actually has a chorus when the band goes, Death Metal! This song happens to have some pretty nice drum work throughout, and it is one of the fastest songs on the album as a whole. Seven Churches is hailed as a classic for a very, very good reason. This album is awesome. It is fantastic from beginning to end. I absolutely love it. It really does deserve the love and attention that it's gotten over the years. If I'm being completely fair as a critic here, this album has very little variation in speed, and it might be called a little bit repetitive. And the lyrics on this album are not very good. They're actually pretty juvenile, but what do you expect? A bunch of high schoolers did this. Some might also say that the songwriting on this particular release is fairly simplistic. That doesn't make it bad, however. I feel that there's a very good chance that when you're listening to this album, you just won't care. This album has a sense of energy that you really get throughout the entire thing, and it sounds like the band is very passionate about what they're playing. They seem to be really enjoying themselves as well as enjoying the music that they play, and this is really what puts this album over the top. Every single note of this album exudes an awesomeness that will not let you go until it has played its final note. I highly recommend anyone that loves thrash metal or death metal pick this album up. It is absolutely superlative. This album is fantastic. Hey, I've done quite a number of these reviews at this point, though this is the very first one in HD. Click here to watch my review of another very early death metal album that is hailed as a classic, From Beyond by Massacre, and click here to watch my review of Sanity Obscure by the technical thrash metal band Believer. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe down below. That would be greatly appreciated, and if you could share this video, that would help me out a lot too. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye.